going to try something a little bit different here. This has a microphone, so hopefully the sound quality is a little bit better for you guys. The discussion I'm going to have here is kind of something I think is common knowledge, but um, maybe it isn't, and that's probably why it's worth talking about, is when should you make changes in your training program, and how should you make those changes? This does not apply to you if you are an Olympian, obviously, and this doesn't apply to you if you're some kind of elite level powerlifter or elite level strongman. This is for the majority of people, okay? So we're just going to choose one movement. We're just going to talk about the squat, but you can apply the same concept to all of your movements. Let's say you're going to start off with a back squat, and it's going to be a high bar back squat, okay? So the very first week you come in and you do 135 for a set of 10, right? That's your rep range that you're going to focus on. So you do like 3 sets of 10 or something. The second week you come in and you do 4 sets of 10, and then you come in and you do 5 sets of 10, right? And you're slowly working your way up in volume, right? By the time you get to about 5 sets of 10, I would start trying to increase the rep range, but we're still doing a high bar back squat, so we haven't changed anything really other than the fact that we're increasing the volume. So now instead of doing 5 sets of 10, you try to do 3 sets of 10 and 2 sets of 12, right? So you're still getting 5 sets, but we're getting a little more reps in there. And then you're doing 5 sets of 12 eventually, okay? At some point you hit a point where you're just not able to get another rep. So maybe you get to a point where you're doing 135 for, you know, 5 sets of 20, right? Which is an absurd amount of volume, actually. I think it's too much volume, but for the example I'm giving here, this is going to be just fine because 135 for a set of 20 is probably very sufficient, getting 100 reps in, okay? Now, this is the point that I'm trying to illustrate, though, is that now you're getting this huge volume in. I mean, you're doing 100 reps. I'm not sure that that's the best choice for you. Like, just think about the amount of time that you're investing in this. At some point, it becomes like the law of diminishing returns. You're just not going to get a whole lot out of that. So even though maybe 5 sets of 10 was a good workout, by the time that you've worked your way up to 5 sets of 20, that's not a good choice anymore. It's just time consuming. So the better thing for you to do, okay, is this change is where you're doing like 5 sets of 10 and you add 5 pounds. So now you go from 135 to 140, and the next time you come in and you're doing 145, and then you're doing 150, and then 155. Eventually you get to a weight, let's say it's 185, and you can't make a set of 10. You get to 185 and you get, I don't know, 8 reps or 9 reps, and you just can't get that 10th rep. You actually hit failure. At that point, you're going to stay at 185, but now you're going to drop down and you're going to do 5 sets of 8. And, now you're able to start making progress again. So your high bar back squat still, 5 sets of 8 at 185, and then you move up to 190, 195, 200, 205, and mid-say you get to 210, and now you can't make 8 reps anymore. So now you're doing 6 with 210. All right, 5 sets of 6 with 210, then it's, 5 sets of 6 with 215, 220, 225. Again, you can't get that 6 rep, so now we drop down to sets of 4. So now you're doing 5 sets of 4 with 225, 230, 235. Okay, we hit 235 and you hit another wall. So you can only get like 4 reps, or wherever we are. It doesn't matter. The point is we're going to drop down to 3s. Okay, and you're going to do 3s at, I feel like I should have written this down or something because it's hard for me to keep all these numbers in my head. As soon as I say 3, I start thinking of other numbers. But basically, we're going to drop down to sets of 3. And so, you make progress on sets of 3 to hit 275. And now you can't make 275 for a set of 3. So you're doing, maybe 2 reps. Screw it. Let's just go to singles at that point. And you're just going to max out, basically, like the progression, not max out. Like, I don't want you to come in and just do 1 rep max. We're going to max out the progression by doing singles at this point. So maybe you're doing 5 to 6 singles per workout. And, you do 5 singles at 275, 5 singles at 280, 5 singles at 285, and you make it all the way up to 315. And guess what? Like, now you're fried and you can't do it anymore. Okay? This is a good time for you to change the program entirely. And so, because you're not an elite level powerlifter competing in powerlifting, because you're not an elite level Olympic weightlifter competing in Olympic weightlifting, you're going to switch off to something like a safety bar squat. And you're going to figure out a weight that you can do for a set of 10, and you're just going to start the whole progression all over again. So now you're going to do 5 sets of 10 with whatever weight it is that is appropriate for you with the safety bar squat. And you're going to run that progression all the way through again. Okay? Now, do you have to go all the way down to singles? No, you don't. Absolutely not. I just gave that as the most extreme scenario, that we're going to start off with sets of 10 and run it all the way down to singles. You don't have to do that. You can make it to sets of 3 and then decide to go back to sets of 10. Okay? You can make it down to sets of 5 and then go back to sets of 10. You don't have to follow a progression that necessarily gets you down to doing singles. But the point that I'm trying to illustrate, though, is that at some point you want to change the movement. And that's because most people are just generally looking to get stronger. If you are planning to compete in powerlifting, I actually really feel like you need to have the competition back squat as part of your training, even if it's just one session per week. Just like how if you're an Olympic weightlifter, you probably should do a full snatch and a full clean and jerk at least once a week. There's a skill component, there's a technical component. But if you're just looking to get stronger, especially if you're a field sport athlete, no one cares what your competition back squat is. You could spend your whole career doing front squats, and safety bar squats, and hack squats, and leg presses, and it wouldn't make a difference. No one cares what your competition, powerlifting standard back squat is. You don't have to do it. Just like how no one cares what your full snatch is. You could do hang power snatches for your entire career, and you would still be fine. As a field sport athlete, no one's ever going to ask you, what's your best full snatch? Not going to happen. Just like how you do power cleans instead of cleans. It doesn't matter. Football players do tons of power cleans, and there's no rule that you have to do cleans. You could do hang cleans and power cleans. No one cares what your full clean and jerk is. So, now you're going to run the safety bar thing, and you run the safety bar squat for however long it is. You start off with the sets of 10, then whenever you plateau on that, then you go down to sets of 8, then maybe sets of 6, maybe sets of 4, maybe doubles. Maybe you don't take it down to singles, so you get down to doubles, and then it's time to switch again. Now you could go back to the high bar back squat, or you could switch to front squats for a while. And I will tell you right now that doing front squats sets of 10 sucks big time, but it's really effective. It's really, really effective. So sometimes the things that suck the most are the most effective. So yeah, you switch to front squats. You do front squats for sets of 10, then 8s, then 6s, 5s, 3s, whatever. And then you want to change it again. And maybe you switch to a low bar back squat, right? But the point is that you don't want to change the movement every week. I realize that this has become a popular thing, likely due to Westside, which is totally fine. But the thing that I would like to point out to people is that the guys at Westside are so advanced and so elite that they have to change the stimulus every week because they're maxing out over and over and over again. And they would plateau if they weren't constantly changing the stimulus. For you, the goal, at least as far as I feel about these things, is that you actually want to adapt to the stimulus. You should adapt to the stimulus and then change the stimulus. And most people are going to be able to get stronger for a little while at least with the same stimulus over and over and over again. Most of us are not at such an elite level where we have to completely radically change the stimulus every week. Most of us are not there. If you are, that's great. This video probably isn't very useful to you unless maybe you coach. And so keep this in mind with the people that you coach. You want to take a stimulus and squeeze as much out of it as you possibly can before you switch. And so that's why you might run the high bar for a while, then switch to a safety bar, then switch to a front squat, then switch to a low bar back squat. And you know what? Maybe you got some cool toys at your gym, so you switch to a belt squat for a while. I'm not really a fan of using the belt squat for like super heavy work. I really feel like it's better as an accessory, but I've certainly seen people use it where they've run it down to heavy sets of 3s. My personal take on that is that the belt squat is better as an accessory movement because of the fact that you're not loading up your spine the same way it is whenever you have a barbell on your back. And so the belt squat allows people to get more high rep work in, where the legs are really your limiting factor. I'm sure that plenty of you have been in a situation where you're doing high bar back squats or even low bar back squats, and it feels like your back is giving out before your legs are. The belt squat is great for hammering your legs without wearing your back out. So I feel like it's a better movement for really high rep work. Um, Doing high rep work with like a back squat, I've done it. Um, but again, like I feel like your back gives up before your legs do, especially with like sets of 50. I've done that. That was a thing for hockey, doing sets of 50. Um, and usually, like by the time you finish a set of 50, it wasn't your legs that were fried. Like don't get me wrong, like your legs are definitely feeling it. But more often than not, it was like your low back just felt super tight, and it just didn't feel right. You know, you'd really feel it in your back just from how. I mean, shit. Just unrack a bar and just hold it for 5 minutes. Like just the act of holding a bar on your back for 5 minutes straight, like that puts a lot of stress on your spine. Um, Never mind the fact that you're now going to squat. you know, so I feel like the belt squat is really the best tool for high rep squatting. But that doesn't mean you can't use these things in other situations. Every situation is different. I don't have any rules. I change things all the time, and you change it based on the individual. So that's something to keep in mind there. Like this whole thing that I just explained, like you can end up having to throw it all out the window because you have an athlete who plateaus very fast. Some people adapt quicker than others. Some people plateau faster than others. It's not a one size fits all thing. Like I can't sit here and tell you like every 4 weeks change the stimulus. No, that wouldn't make sense. Why would I just give you a cookie cutter program? It doesn't make any sense at all to just assume you're going to plateau at 4 weeks. It's just like this whole thing of deloads. People are like, you need to deload every fourth week, or you need to deload every fifth week. Maybe you don't, you know? Um, I kind of just throw deload weeks in where it seems appropriate. So when people tell me, oh, I feel kind of run down, I feel kind of stale, I didn't really have it today, it's like, well, we're going to take a week of deload then. Now that could be 3 weeks in, that could be 8 weeks in. Like there isn't a right or wrong answer to this. You just need to recognize that, hey, I'm accumulating fatigue and now would be a good time to deload. But the bigger part of this video that I wanted to hammer home is when should you change the stimulus? Well, you should change the stimulus only after you squeezed as much out of it as you possibly can. So once you take that stimulus and you get as much out of it as you can, that's when you want to change it. Don't just change to a different squat every week because, I don't know, because you're trying to copy Westside. Um, that's great. If you're at elite level, go ahead and copy Westside. But for most people, that's not necessary. Most people can stick with the same movement for at least 2-3 weeks minimum before they'll have to change anything. That's even with a very advanced lifter. Even a very advanced lifter will probably be able to squeeze something out of a movement for a few weeks before they have to change it. Elite level, that's totally different. Once you get to the elite level, it's like they have to hit drastically different stimuli from one workout to another for them to continue to make progress because they're already so adapted to everything. So, they can't just keep adding 5 pounds to the bar as their stimulus. They can't just keep adding reps as their stimulus. They have to keep changing the angles and stuff like that, even just so they don't accumulate overuse injuries, because they've got a lot of mileage. Like it takes years for you to get to that level. So whenever you're at that level, like you've already accumulated a ton of wear and tear on your joints. Don't get me wrong, there's freaks. There are freaks who walk in and just, you know, squat 500 pounds the first time, but that's not 99% of us. You're not Ed Cohn, you're not Chuck Vogelpohl. You're not going to walk into a gym and pull something incredible off the ground on your very first attempt. Most of us have to spend years working up to that, and so that's why I tell you that everyone's different. But as a general rule, you can apply this to yourself. Basically, you're going to take any movement, whether, like, let's just go with the bench press. You're going to do a bench press for however many weeks it is before you plateau, and then whenever that you hit a sticking point or something, you'll switch to a football bar. Oh, okay. You switch to a close grip. You switch to an incline. You switch to using dumbbells even. Whatever it is, you change the stimulus only once you hit a plateau and you stall. Don't start changing the stimulus constantly all the time. That's as bad as program hopping. You're not adapting to the stimulus, so you're just changing the stimulus all the time. You definitely want to adapt to the stimulus, get as much out of it as possible, and then change it. So that would be my advice to people on knowing when to change things. And that's how I even implement it with, variants. If we're doing hang power snatches, you take it for as far as you can, and then you switch to hang snatches. You know, it's just makes logical sense to me. Why would you change the stimulus if it's still working? As long as the stimulus is still working, keep doing it. And then once it plateaus, that's when you make the change. And also, be smart enough to recognize when you're accumulating too much fatigue. Take a deload, because sometimes the only reason why you plateaued is just because you're damn fatigued. Like, that's what it is. You're just too damn fatigued. Take that deload. If that deload doesn't do it, that's probably a great time for you to change the stimulus. So I hope you guys found this useful. If you liked the video, like the video. If you have experience with this, if you have feedback, if you've done this, if you find that this works for you, comment below, share it. If you have a method for recognizing whenever you want to change the stimulus, comment below. I'm very open-minded about this stuff. It's not like I have a one-size-fits-all. I am not someone who adheres to some kind of dogmatic belief on changing things. Like I said, even like Westside, it's just that I think that most people aren't at the level where they need to change that often. So it's not like this is not an anti-Westside video. This is saying Westside is great, but it works better for people who are advanced or elite level rather than for beginners and intermediates. So that's not a criticism of Westside. It's really just saying choose the program that fits the athlete rather than trying to force the athlete to fit the program. So if you guys like this kind of content, be sure to subscribe. I love talking about this kind of stuff. If you have questions, put them in the comments. If you have a topic you want me to cover around this kind of stuff, comment. I'm really open to talking about these things. If you guys have a suggestion, like, hey, I'd really like to hear about this, just tell me, and we'll cover it. So thanks so much for your time.